So I learned craftsmanship. Whatever you do it well, is what he used to always say. Whether you're making a knife or going to school, do it well. Do it with a craftsman attitude. I've learned to let the business tell you what it wants. The athletes, and especially men, powerlifter men, CrossFit men, men who are wilderness champions, they went crazy for my product. If you come with an empty tank, empty muscles, no minerals, how can you ask them to work for you? The Fountain of Youth is rumored to have been an exaggerated account of some sacred Native American bathing area that was a natural hot spring. Countless different ailments were cured. It really is a powerful practice.
Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in to Wilderness Attitude Podcast. I appreciate you taking time out of your life to come hear a cool story or an adventure or meet someone new. And of course, we have a cool guest today that I got to meet at the Western Hunt and Conservation Expo in Salt Lake City this year. We were hanging out there in the Wilderness Athlete booth, doing podcasts and selling stuff for Wilderness Athlete and having a good time. And then I had done a brief podcast with a gentleman by the name of Eli Langford. And he seems to know a lot of cool people in all phases of outdoor athletics and science and all this stuff. Well, lo and behold, by the end of the afternoon, we were greeted with this really bright presence from Lissy Largin showing up with this, I think it was a paper bag from a supermarket or something with what's that?
It was a Harmon's bag.
And Harmon's bag loaded full to the hilt with Salty Viking Mineral soaks. And she came up, introduced herself, and we chatted for a little while. And of course, I was robbing this bag for all the samples I could get because I was super excited to try this stuff out. And what she was saying to me was resonating to me as a hunter, as a working man, as an athlete. That's like, wow, I never thought of this. So I took it upon myself to take these soaks home. And of course, many of my listeners, you know that I've been working through Train to Hunt, and this will probably be released after Train to Hunt is over. But I want you all to know that after putting a little time into some of this mineral soak and learning more about mineral bathing and whatnot, my skepticism or my lack of knowledge to the situation, I put it aside. I jumped in a hot bath, started using this product, and I noticed over a week or so this change in how my body was responding to my training, how it was allowing me to take some time to slow down my brain, my body, and listen to myself a little bit more. And I really started feeling some advantages to using this product. And I want everybody to know that Lissy is not a sponsor of the podcast. She is just someone who rolled up off the street with this cool product, and we jumped into it. And I just really felt that it was something that was working for me, listeners. It was something that made me feel better. And I felt like I needed to get Lissy on so that you could have a chance to understand Salty Viking Minerals and what they are, what they can do for you, and some of the research and science behind some of this product, and give you a place to go to have a better understanding and maybe a place to go to order some stuff up and give it a shot. And when I know that I find something that works for me at 47 years old and makes a difference for me, it's something I want to share with the listeners. So this isn't the run-of-the-mill podcast, but I think that you're really going to like you're going to like Lissy. I can tell you that. She's just a bright, shining woman, business person that just has energy and great ideas and is passionate about what she does. And that's what Wilderness Attitude is about, is having that positive message, attitude, and just resonating that. And so, without further ado, Lissy Largin of Salty Viking Minerals, thank you for being on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. That was a wonderful introduction. Thank you.
You're very welcome. To our listeners, we had a little bit of some. We can't seem to get away with Skype. Do I have a listener out there that can build something better than Skype? That's the question, right? Um, it serves our purposes, but at the same time, every time I do a podcast, there's always this one little thing about Skype or OBS or something that we're working through, and maybe one day it'll be seamless, Lissy. I don't know.
Maybe they always make me feel that all my years of study and schooling were for nothing because I can't even, start a conversation. It makes me feel very special.
Right. Well, and in this day and age, unfortunately, everybody wants to feel special, and so there's nobody that's really special. Does
It's
that
true.
make sense?
Yeah.
We all get a trophy now,
Yeah.
right?
Participation stickers.
Yeah, not my gig.
I
I don't like it.
know. No, you would not.
Well, listeners, me and Lissy had a chance to hang out a little bit before the Skype call and work through some cool stuff, get to know each other a little bit. And some of the things that I really found interesting about Lissy is that she is just a flat out go getter, man, and very well spoken, as you'll see. And we take us back, Lissy, to where you started, in life, and where you grew up and what it was like and for
Yeah.
you.
And this is exciting. With your listeners, the people that are in your world, I feel like y'all will appreciate a little bit more my history and background because I was born in the middle of nowhere, Montana. My dad was all about, he was a knife maker, made wonderful custom knives, if you've ever heard of Kelton knives, and he used to make knives for Buck and Orvis. And so he just loved being off the radar. And so he bought this little town in Montana, in Lozo area, and he loves to brag to people that he paid for my brother and me both, the doctor, with a handmade hunting knife. So I actually was brought into the world with a hunting knife. And
Nice.
yeah, so that's kind of a fun story. And then when I was 3, we moved to southeastern Indiana. So I was raised and grew up in Indiana. So I identify as a Hoosier, even though I was, born in Montana. And then later ended up in Salt Lake, where I am now.
So that's a cool story. We didn't get to touch on that. That's pretty neat
Yeah,
that, yeah, your dad could brag about the fact that being a knife maker put 2 kids through college. That can't be easy, you
yeah.
know?
Well, at least paid the doctor to have us.
Oh,
But
I see.
made his whole living. He made his whole living as a knife maker, which is really unusual for a craftsman to make it. And he made beautiful, beautiful knives. Very talented. So I
Sounds
learned
cool.
craftsmanship. Whatever you do it well. Is what he used to always say. Whether you're making a knife or going to school, do it well. Do it with a craftsman attitude.
Right. Do you still have your first knife that your dad gave you?
Yeah, I do. I do. And I also have the first one that we made together because being a knife maker's daughter, my first job at 7 years old was drilling holes in steel on an industrial drill press at a nickel a pop until my dad fired me because I was making more than his apprentices. And so I had him fired for my first job at 7.
That's tough. That's a rough go at 7 years old, man. Couldn't imagine.
Yeah, it was
Well,
fun.
but
Comfortable with the machinery and equipment.
right. Well, that's impressive. I mean, coming from where you come from and having skills at that age to even run equipment or even be entrusted. I mean, nowadays I'm sure there's some child labor laws that would be violated, and OSHA would probably have a complete shit fit. So
Yeah,
it's
tell
one of
'em.
those things might not work out today.
And it's always been funny because, I grew up as a dancer at the Performing Arts School of Ballet outside of Cincinnati, Ohio. And I studied business. I have a master's degree in public administration with a focus in economic development and statistics. I served in the Peace Corps. And yet, people who know me find me to be very girly and very, nerdy. And so when I am around a piece of equipment and I just say, oh, yeah, I can make knives. And, what kind of steel is that? And my dad used to use 440 steel, and I loved the desert ironwood. It's kind of, it makes people double take. They say,
Right.
huh? Equipment and you aren't afraid of being dirty, even though, I definitely have found myself in a different world that I love, but I am very comfortable and love my father's world and really appreciate that dichotomy that I was able to get through him.
It's a good foundation, it sounds like, for
Yeah,
you to blossom off into as a young lady and be who you wanted to be, right? I mean, he gave you that. He embraced that in you right off the bat, being
hmm,
happy with who you are and working hard and doing what needs to be done to make sure at the end of the day that it's taken care of.
absolutely.
And
That's the main thing I got from my father was your life doesn't have to make sense to anyone else but you. And whatever you're doing, do it with a craftsman attitude.
love it. Well, and I think it's carrying over into the Salty Viking mineral world. I mean, this is not your first business endeavor. So, but take us back to what you mentioned about being a dancer and ballet and things like that. I mean, that's not easy stuff.
Yeah. And it's not easy on your body for sure. So, I grew up in a very traditional sort of dance training where everything was about perfection and mastering what you do with every piece from down to your little pinky finger needed to be in the right place. So there was a lot of muscle memory and there was a lot of repeating motions. And as I grew as a dancer, my fun dance was tap dancing. It was also available at my studio, and I loved that because I got to be a little more loose and got to make noise with my feet, and I loved the rhythm. But ballet was my first passion, and I loved just the perfection and the precision of it. And ballet, dance in general, very much teaches me about life. The beauty in ballet comes from the stretching different ways. So for example, you can't really see my arm very well, but if I put my arm out, I'm not pushing it forward and I'm not pulling it back. It's that stretch where my arm's coming back and my fingers are going forward. If I'm standing on the ground, I'm pushing my head towards the ceiling and I'm pushing my feet down into the ground. And everything with ballet gets its beauty from that stretch through the middle, that you don't push any one way. You have
Right.
those opposite poles. So I loved that growing up. And when I was 17, I started doing, jazz and a lot of different dance. And it was really my life because, with a knife maker dad, he wasn't always able to pay dance school tuition. So I would teach classes to pay for my classes and had team practices at night. And when I was 17, I tore 40% of the way through my origin cord of my hamstring. So basically,
Ouch.
yeah, yeah, felt good. And it just came from being an invincible 17-year-old. I had been told by a physical therapist because I had a knot in my hamstring. I'd been told, don't push it. You have a 4-inch ridge of little stress tears. Don't push it. Take some time off. But I had a competition coming up, so I didn't. I was 17, and I did a high kick behind me, and all of a sudden my leg went a lot further than it should have, and I just felt a pop. And, in denial, I went home, kind of startled, and I went to bed. And the next morning, I couldn't even sit up because everything had just locked up. And it was a 40% tear through the origin cord, as I said. And it took me a year and a half of physical therapy every other day to kind of get the scar tissue that built around it at a functional place because the cord itself will never fully regenerate. And so it was basically a process of stripping out scar tissue to try and make it as usable as possible while still filling in that tear. And my dance career was over. I had to turn down dance scholarships to college, and it changed my life very quickly. And what I didn't know is it would be about 5 years until I could sit for more than an hour without feeling pain. And to this day, 17 years later, I still have moments where when I'm stretching, I don't feel it through the body of my hamstring. I feel it at the top. It's kind
Mm,
of the weak link where I'll feel that tension. So,
right.
it was at the time devastating for me to not study dance at college and to turn down scholarships. But I ended up finding business, and I never would have gone to business school had it not been for not being able to do anything with my body the way I thought I'd be able to.
Right.
And so I ended up studying business and found out that after fighting statistics for a while, I ended up falling in love with numbers and their precision. I think that was a little bit related to my ballet background of there's a preciseness to statistics that I found to be very powerful.
Right.
It changed for
Well,
my life.
well, I'll tell you what, a few things there that I can go back. I don't know if I've ever told my listeners this, but I also tap danced
What?
for a little while.
Yeah.
Um, I think I was about 9 or 10.
Uh-huh.
And the only way anybody is really going to know for sure if that happened is they'd have to see the pictures in my mom's house because otherwise you will never see them. For me, tap dance had to have been the most embarrassing thing that my parents ever made me do.
It's so cool. You're a percussionist. Everyone wants to be a drummer. You just got to use your body.
There was a certain part about it that I liked as far as like practicing. But when I had to perform in front of somebody with a cute little suit, or like I remember it was a black, it was like a silky looking thing. I'm sure it was polyester, but it was like black bottoms and a white top, and on the white top had like black music notes on it,
Ooh, yeah.
and some sort of fluffy things at the ends, not fluffy, but flared might be the better terminology. And then, of course, I had a dance partner. Every girl until I was probably 20 years old was bigger than me, taller. Okay. Every girlfriend I had was much taller than me. And so that was embarrassing for me. So I never embraced it and took it anywhere. Um, Next thing that I can say is that it's amazing. I was a swimmer and I was swimming and I ended up breaking my back skiing in my junior year. And in my junior year, I was crushing times swimming like crazy. I was only mid-season and was already state qualified. I was killing it. And when some of the seniors at our school had Florida Gators there and CSU and Southern Cal, and they were all there looking at them, I garnered a little attention because as a junior, I was swimming really well. Um, and so that event and breaking my back led me down a different road, much like your injury did. Although my listeners do know that my road after that was not a good road. I turned towards the dark side and gave up. And what's encouraging is for my listeners to hear is that all walks of life and all injuries and all things that happen, like we talked about, are doors that open and doors that close. And they're there, and just taking advantage of those, like your father told you, to just do your best with what you got and make it successful is a pretty cool message that you're giving. And so you turn this corner of business and then you start working into other things, and you may have never be sitting here. I may never have been sitting here. We would have never known back then, right?
Yeah,
So
absolutely. It's amazing the way, and even though they're unexpected turns, I feel like when you look back over time, it's like you were always going where you were going. You just didn't know that's where you were trying to get to.
that's a good point because um, life's it's already kind of there for the most part. I mean, we think we're in control of it, but ultimately we're not. And that's the bottom line, right?
Absolutely.
And so you mentioned before that that's kind of the that's the patience that you have in the business that you're in right now. You're allowing your business to take itself where it needs to, right? You're not kicking doors down. You're just presenting opportunities and being aware of when those doors open and close. So tell us about how you kind of transitioned into Salty Viking through your business career here.
Yeah, absolutely. I was working. Well, I think it's important to mention that went into the Peace Corps after my master's. I was assigned to work with the Mexican federal government's equivalent of basically the Environmental Protection Agency. And I was assigned to work in an area that was an important watershed for the region. It was being completely destroyed by sugarcane farming, and they assigned me to help them with sustainable small businesses that wouldn't degrade the environment. And as a postmaster's 26-year-old gringa who didn't speak any Spanish when I got there, it was a phenomenal challenge for me. But the most wonderful thing about it was that there's a slogan for Peace Corps that is the toughest job you'll ever love, and I
Right.
completely agree with that. It made me have to think and work and decide. And because I had learned in dance that a lot of times it's just paying the price for something. When you start something new, it's not natural. When you're going somewhere, you're trying to accomplish something, it's not always a glorious road of you feeling powerful. There are a lot of
Right.
days you're just paying the price, one day at a time. So it took me a while until I didn't feel completely useless at communicating in the middle of nowhere by myself trying to speak Spanish and trying to help people with sustainable livelihoods. And, over that, I learned how to work on all kinds of businesses. And I learned that while there's a certain way you learn that business works in your textbooks, in the major corporations, in theory, when it's coming to, Jose trying to feed his family and keep his kids in school, it's really different. Even though business is business, all of a sudden there's there's lives and there's families and there are homes that are depending on this business in a way that Coca-Cola Corporation isn't considering on their books. So it was
Right.
a really powerful opposite extreme of what I had just been studying in school. So when I came home, because I spoke Spanish, I ended up working in a business development center where I helped people of all walks of life, including a lot of people that had come from Spanish speaking countries. And I was helping them with a lot of product based businesses, and I had never done a product based business before. So, in order to hone my skills, I always was a hobbyist of, bathing products and such. So I started a different company that was like natural bath products, just so that I could really understand how a business works from the product standpoint and getting into stores and making distributor relationships. And it was so much fun. I just loved it. It was creative, it was adventurous, it was an excellent exercise. And I got better and better at advising. I ordered some packaging from China, and a week later, someone came in and said, "Hey, I'm trying to get these things from China. I don't know if it's a scam or if it's the real deal." And I was able to, like an expert, say, "Oh, here's how this works. Let me tell you. When I did this for my business 2 weeks ago." And so, little by little, I was able to be a better business advisor and be able to help my clients at a level that actually gave them something tangible. And about a year later, I was approached by a company that was interested in buying my company. And I realized that company had a lot of capital investment required before I'd be able to scale it to the next step. So the second I was approached by their CEO, wondering if I'd be willing to sell my company, I said, "Well, let me think about it." "Oh my gosh, yes, please take it." I didn't tell them that,
Right.
but I played hardball and I negotiated and everything. But in my mind, I was going, "Oh my gosh, I will just give this to you. I am not going to take it to the next level." But with all of that, I feel like all of those things came together and sort of set that stage of where Salty Viking was about to be born.
Right. Well, now I mean, that's funny that you bring up the whole packaging and the from China stuff and the different things. So, because that's like me, I'm like, where do they come up with this bags? Like, who makes this stuff? Who designs this? Not that I have anything in the works, like I have, that I'm gonna be bagging anything, but I always look at stuff and I'm like, who even gets this? Where does this come from? But you had mentioned a little bit, like with your injury when you're younger, that it was maybe a low in your life, but maybe a high at the same time, because here you are, things are good, life is good, Salty Viking is doing well. What along this journey after you sold that company and began to create Salty Viking, what were some of the challenges that you met that you maybe thought, oh, this is it? Like, I can't go any further. Or, holy cow, it's happening,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, what's been incredible about Salty Viking is things have come together so incredibly that I almost wasn't able to take advantage of all the wonderful things that were coming as quickly as they were coming to me. Just because I was at the time, I was executive director of a business development center, and I have clients that I do consulting for, and I'm on a salsa dancing team. Years later, or a few years ago, I found salsa dance, and I absolutely love that. And it takes a lot of time and effort. And, so I was doing a lot of things and
Mm-hmm.
starting Salty Viking, kind of thinking I would ease my way into it. And because of all my work with different businesses, my own and others, I've learned to let the business tell you what it wants. And this product, while I had created it and used it for physical purposes because I was dancing, because I was hard on my body, I kind of thought maybe it would be appealing to more kind of the Whole Foods, natural market. And yet, and that's the direction I was originally going, hot springs
Right.
in a bottle. And instead, the athletes, and especially men, power lifter men, CrossFit men, men who are wilderness champions, they went crazy for my product when I was in the testing period because they understand that they need to take care of their body if they need their body to show up and work for them. So it was sort of this surprise for me of I need to go into this athlete supplement, people who work hard with their body market because the product and the consumers are telling me this. And I joke that I'm a junk scientist. I looked everything up. I had researched the minerals. I had done this. I have a proprietary mineral blend. It has magnesium, sulfur, potassium, calcium, all these wonderful minerals, some essential oils. And I made it unisex so it didn't smell all girly. And
I thought that was something funny that you told me earlier, that you're like, I finally, you had to, when you kind of rounded it out with the cedar and the peppermint, because you
uh-huh,
got lavender in there too, right? And of course, we all know my wife loves lavender, and I'm not like that way,
uh-huh.
but you did. You had. I mean, was that one of those things when you're like, "Gosh, this is so girly, but I got to get it this way"? And was there trouble making it that way?
Yeah, there were a lot of experiments. I actually thought originally for the recovery mineral blend, I actually had it rosemary and lime, and I thought men would like that because rosemary is very herbaceous and earthy, and I thought the lime would just have this little zing to it, and to me it smelled green and earthy. Men did not like it,
Huh.
and that was my favorite. I thought men would like it. Girls liked it. And the one that had lavender, I didn't think men would like it, but that cedar and the touch of mint made it so men were saying, "Oh, I like the cedar one. I like the cedar one." The strong men, more than 80% of my customers are strong men who work with their bodies, and they loved the lavender cedar mint mix to the point that I actually do both products in that scent because men loved it, women loved it, and it's easier for me in production just to have one type anyway. So
Works.
a win, I'll take it.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's one thing that you touched on. The listeners need to understand is like you even sponsor the Colorado a gentleman that's in the strongman competitions, right? And if you go on your website, you get a look at this guy, And this is not a girly product. I mean, you would not want to mess around with this dude. He's a big man. And I just see this guy, using Salty Viking. And it's cool, you came up with a cool name, right? So it's not too girly either, and whatnot. But I think it just totally works. I don't know.
It's
It's
great. He was one of the first to go nuts on the product because he's training so hard. And with
uh,
his trainer, they were focusing on recovery. And his trainer is a PhD in physiology. And so when he was introduced to the product, he instantly just called me and said, "How much can I get? How can I do this?" Because this was my missing piece. And
right.
I didn't say it to him, but my first thought was, what bathtub do you fit in?
That's what I was just gonna ask you. I'm like, is he dumping this whole thing in a hot tub or something? Because he's a big man.
I don't want to be inappropriate, but can you send a picture? He's a big dude. And he uses the product all the time. So I'm imagining maybe he has a huge jacuzzi tub or something like that. I'm
Yeah.
not.
Yeah, I would sure think so because I mean, I'm trying to fit just my frame in a standard tub and I'm trying to find one of those things that goes over the drain so I can get it a little bit more full so that I can actually get my legs all underwater. You
Uh-huh.
know, like I can't even do that in this little tub I have.
Depending on the style, my mom had wanted to do that as well, and she was able to loosen it and turn that little overflow drain the other way so it pointed up, and she got a couple more inches out of it.
Damn, I'm going upstairs when we're done. I'm gonna go check that out because
Yeah.
that's all I need is a couple more inches would be great. Um,
Nothing.
Now let's talk. Let's make it clear that I mean you're a hack scientist, right? I mean you're a businesswoman dealing with a very scientific product, so you have some knowledge, but you don't have a background in science, right?
Huh? Yeah, so that was definitely the challenge. Once the market was telling me this product goes to this group of people, a big group of people that are involved in physical activity. And one thing I've learned about all of these people, you people, is that they want the real science. They don't want to just say it smells pretty and feels good. They need to know what's in it. They need to know what works. They need to know how it works. So all of a sudden, I found myself as a hobby nutrition and science person in a world where that doesn't fly. And
Right.
there's a lot of junk science out there that we think is just a given. And if you try to peddle that to the people who know, you'll quickly discredit yourself. So lucky for me, my salsa partner had two contacts that are PhDs in physiology. He introduced me to them. Lucky for me, they're fantastic human beings and they are adventurous and smart and interesting and passionate. And because they understand the science, they looked at the product and both said, "Wow, this is the real deal. This is really good." And were able to back up why it was good, be able to tell me how to perfect things and hone things, and I rely on them before I post content. I
Hmm.
sent my labels to them first to make sure I wasn't claiming anything that was incorrect, etc. But I found that they need to be part of my team. I can't survive
Right.
without a PhD or two as part of my team because I have to have real science for this company.
Yeah, because you can't say that any of these statements are FDA approved, right? I mean, it's along the same lines as some of the wilderness athlete products that I take. I mean, it's like there's science behind it, but the FDA won't back it up.
Correct.
I don't even know why we have the FDA. To be honest, I think that it's like I don't I don't trust everything they got to say anyway. Um, but that's why I'm always into trying things myself. Like when you showed up those packages, I'm like, I'm gonna see this for myself. Now, I won't even begin to tell you, you know, I mean, I know what magnesium, sodium, calcium, sulfur, potassium is, but I know what they are because I've heard their name.
Uh-huh.
I can't tell you what they really are. I slept in science class. Um, Barely graduated high school, so I don't have any science background. But what I, for me, sometimes that's hard, right? When you look at somebody and say, just try it,
Uh-huh.
right? Some people, if they trust your opinion, they'll just try it and they'll see if it's for them. But like you say, a lot of people are like, nah, 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 nah. I want to know more. I want to know more. And once you surrounded yourself with these guys and it got more legitimate, what you had already pretty much had 98%
Mhm.
dialed in, right? They're able to help you out, put you in the right space and tweak a few things and then move forward. And um, I think that that's something that you have to have. And you've gone as far as what I noticed on your website, having a spot. If you have questions, one of your gentlemen that's on your team will answer their question directly about the product.
Yes, and I love this, not just about the product, about anything. Because as I was developing this, I thought one of my strengths is I know what I do well and I know what I don't do well. And so, I wasn't going to go get a PhD in physiology so that I had the credibility to add to my company, but I also wasn't going to ignore it. And so, lucky for me, I have these incredible PhDs who are so interesting and so smart and so relatable that I find I bend their ear all the time. I'll call them up and say, "Hey, I just had a really tough workout and I'm feeling this way and this happened." Or when I do this, the next day I feel like this. And they will give me the most incredible explanation of what's going on, what the common science, the bro science, as they like to call it, the bro science think this, but what you actually need is this. And it has literally been life changing for me. So once I experienced that, I thought, well, I'm never going to do this better. So let's just connect straight to them so that anyone who needs to understand how to stay strong, how to recover, can, right through the website, be in touch with an incredible researcher and scientist to answer their questions.
Yeah, and I mean, I mentioned Eli Langford earlier in the podcast as to how we met. Um, he's with the Outdoor and Fitness Research, and he's the director of research on the Wilderness Athlete team that they have. But he's in Idaho, and remind me the college
It's
name.
BYU, Idaho, Brigham Young
That's it.
University, Idaho.
And so he leads up all that research there, right? And now you mentioned to me earlier that they have done a really comprehensive study on your product at this point, and we're waiting kind of
Yes,
impatiently for this.
yes, yes, they are giving the results next week. What's wonderful is that Dr. Langford, he does a lot of research projects with private companies, and he also teaches, is a professor. And so he will have a class do a research project. And when we first had met, he asked me if I'd ever be interested in his students doing that research project for me. And my answer was, of course I would. Why would I not? That's
Right.
incredible. So in January, he called me and he said, "Are you still interested?" And I said, "What do you need to do? How much product? Where do I take it?" Because you pay hundreds of thousands of dollars for even a basic study, let alone millions of dollars for what some of these larger companies are asking for their supplements, their equipment. And since that is such a barrier to entry in this world where people care about the science, I made it happen. I drove 3.5 hours to take him product because it was expensive to ship, a lot
Yeah,
of.
I can only imagine.
Yeah, so I just hopped in the car. I drove up there, took it, and he and a colleague have overseen this research project with several students, and they're testing on college students who they're making them work out really hard, and then they're recovering with either Salty Viking or a placebo, and then making them work out hard again to see how their strength does. And then Eli and I have also talked about doing additional projects that are more in depth and additional research. So that is huge for a budding company to have access to someone like Eli. So the
Right.
fifth, I'm getting the results on the 5th of April. We're really excited.
So those results will be out before this airs, probably. So if you're listening to this, head to the website and check it out because I'm sure you're going to be stoked to put that up. Because regardless even of the results, in a sense, having that transparency in your company, having a resource for people to ask questions directly to the doctors, doing these different things, I mean, that sets you apart from stuff that we find on the shelf in the supermarket or in the health food store or wherever, right? I mean, this adds a level of legitimacy to your project, your business, your product, the whole scenario, right? And so I think that that's going to be an awesome tool for Salty Viking moving forward for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. It definitely gives that legitimacy to the company. And then on the informal side, the informal studies like you've done, that's been my favorite thing to watch is that I've learned that all you have to do is get some salty Viking in someone's hands, and as soon as they take that bath, I'm hearing from them very soon to order some more, which was what
Right.
happened with you guys, right?
That's exactly what happened for me. I came home and, um, you know, I mean, I came home and probably had it a couple weeks, and then started saying to myself, okay, wow, today was rough on me. You know, when I started tailoring certain specific workouts that were really brutal, a couple days a week, leading into that last 6 week time frame going into my training. I really wanted to do some things that would allow me to see where my bar was set. And so I really pushed myself to an extreme limit and felt like, okay, I did this for a couple weeks, and I would get to the weekend and I'd just be like, I am wrecked. Like I am on the verge of downing a bottle of ibuprofen. It's not something I like to take ever. I mean, I have to be pretty messed up to take ibuprofen, but I was getting there, and I was and I was at a point where my mind was beginning to break down because it was getting mental on me. And so then I just was like, you know what? God, I hurt, like I'm in pain. And when I remember that, I thought, she gave me some pain soak. It says pain on the label, so this means
That's for me.
that's for me. And so, um, so I decided to do it. And the next day, I mean, even that night, I felt better, to be honest. Yeah, I mean, I was still sore, I was still beat up, but I felt better. And that was on a Tuesday evening because I was doing Tuesdays and Thursdays and kicking my own ass. And so I felt better the next day, and I continued with my recovery options that I have that I use for post workout and midnight build and the other wilderness athlete products I do. And I'd kind of changed the scope of my diet a touch as well at that point. So I wasn't quite lending myself the amount of calories I really deserved and needed. So obviously and we all know that we don't get nearly the mineral intake through our food anymore like we used to either, because things are not grown the right way anymore. So it just seemed logical. Pain, I was in pain. I soak, I feel better. Thursday, I soak, I felt better. And then once I started kind of adding that to the point of where I was making it part of my routine, it not only helped me physically in my recovery, but it also helped me mentally. Like I had mentioned to you earlier, it gave me a time to go sit in the bath and slow my world down, sit still, relax, focus on absorbing these minerals, um, and that gave my mind and my body some rest. It gave me the minerals I needed. It helped all the way around for me because as I was working towards the event, I'm thinking, I got to have the right mindset. I got to have movement and mobility and recovery. And so all of laying in a bathtub in a mineral soak made sense. Now, I have great hot springs all around me,
Yes.
but it takes a lot of extra time to go do that. And at what dilution ratio? And then I'm also in a mineral soak with chlorine, and I'm in a mineral soak with other things and whatever. And for me, it just really worked. Pour a super hot tub, pour a packet in, get in, dim the light, chill out, do it all right here at home. And that was convenient for me. And quickly I went through your samples. I don't know what I came home with, maybe 6, right? So then I'm looking at my wife and I'm like, yeah, this is working for me. Order some more. And so she got online and ordered some more, and boom, they were here in 2 days. And so I'm working through those going into the competition next week. And, that's when I called you and said, I like what you got going on. I want to share it. But let's tell the listeners a little bit more, not so much about me, right? This isn't about me.
Story, I love that. I should have warned you. You'll try this and you will be hooked forever. You're welcome.
Yeah, it's funny is I sent Kevin from WA a message probably 3 weeks ago and asked him what he thought about it. He's like, dude, I haven't even soaked in it yet. And I said, Kevin, you are missing the boat. And he just was like, okay, I got it. I'll listen, or I'll soak.
Yeah.
And I sent him another message today before we got on to see if he had soaked yet, and he's ignoring me. But
I'm finding some time later tonight so I can report back.
You're right. Yeah, maybe he will. That would be good. But I think the listeners need to know a little bit more about the history of mineral bathing. I mean, this has been going on a long time in our world. And
Yeah.
regardless of what we can show you science-wise, people understand the importance of mineral bathing, I would think. But maybe they don't. So why don't you tell them a little bit more about that?
Yeah, this practice has been in many cultures across history. You can find a lot of ancient paintings and texts that talk about this. In fact, the Fountain of Youth is rumored to have been an exaggerated account of some sacred Native American bathing area that was a natural hot spring, and it was able to cure all of these issues that people had. Um, the ancient Greeks had these public baths. The city of Bath, England, was named after hot springs. So across history, people just knew that these waters had these magical qualities, and they weren't really sure why. They were warm, and some of them smelled funny. Some of them smelled like sulfur, but countless different ailments were cured. And old stiff people felt young again. So it really is a powerful practice, and there are a lot of studies about how effective are soaps. And one of the reasons they're so important is that your skin is your largest organ, and you're able to either ingest something and send it through your system to try and get it into your body, or you can completely immerse this entire sore bag of meat that you live in and be able to absorb those minerals straight in. And I found it to be really powerful. In fact, going forward with other Salty Viking products, I want to stay skin delivery method as much as possible. Over time, I think we'll expand to other methods. But your skin is such a great place to get that delivery. The skin over the muscles that are giving you problems is such a great place to get that concentrated delivery because like I already said, the skin is such an important place to be able to absorb those minerals that it's been around forever because we humans can't invent what nature I think has already provided us.
Yeah, and like I mentioned before, our food doesn't give us what we used to. A lot of the products that we take, I mean, we break down our bodies and our muscles, depleted glycogen and fluids and macro tearing ourselves to death or micro tearing ourselves to pieces. And, for me, you can take a lot of post workout stuff has, mineral and vitamin content to some value, but what's the real absorption there? But your muscles need to be remineralized. It's a strong part of your growth, and I think it's something that needs to happen.
Your muscles need those minerals to be able to contract and expand, and it's really often overlooked is the recovery aspect, which is what Salty Viking focuses on. Is everything is about recovery because you know that you need to prepare and be ready for a workout. You know that you need to do your workout and do it, this way versus that way, based on all these studies out there. But a lot of people just go home and they don't replenish their glycogen or they don't get those minerals back into their system. And that's where a lot of the limitation goes for people Adam, the strongman champion of Colorado that we mentioned earlier, that Salty Viking sponsors, his whole focus this time around when he was training for the national competition and the Arnold Classic after winning the Colorado competition, his whole focus was recovery. And the reason that was his focus with his trainer, who's a PhD in physiology, was because everyone does the pre workouts. Everyone does these difficult workouts, but not everyone recovers. Not everyone instantly gets glycogen and minerals and everything back into their system. And his competitive advantage, his edge in his competition was recovering because other people aren't doing that.
That's right. And that's something for me that I am thinking that is hopefully the edge for my scenario as well, um, because I need all the help I can get.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah. And if
now,
you come with an empty tank, empty muscles, no minerals, how can you ask them to work for you? And yet we do it all the time. We're all guilty
right.
of it. And that's why we're focusing on recovery at Salty Viking.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of where um, I noticed that when I started replenishing myself properly and I changed a little bit of my diet aspects and started my soaking and started doing some things, my mental state got way better in my training and in my exercise, right?
Absolutely, because that's so important because glycogen is what feeds both your brain and your muscles. So if you've completely depleted your muscles, you've depleted your brain.
Yeah.
And it's just as important to get your muscles replenished as it is your brain so that you can have that push and that cognitive awareness to stay on your plan. Absolutely. I love hearing that. I had the same experience as well.
So I'm wondering, one of the things that I saw on your site that I thought was intriguing, that I had no clue that this could be a possibility, was using your mineral soak directly on bruising.
Yes.
In that, right?
Yeah, yeah. So this was a fun accidental experiment, that informal experiment that I tried on myself. That I know that Salty Viking works really well, and every time I talk to someone who's tried it, they just say, "Oh my gosh, this works!" And then even still, I have these moments where I get reconverted to these minerals. And one of them was I had done a really tough CrossFit evening one Friday night, and one of the many, there were 3 or 4 different segments that night. It was a grueling night. Um, I had hit my knee on some burpee burnout. And I had really banged my knee. I don't think I've ever had a bruise this bad. I got home, my knee was a little puffy. It wasn't really bruised yet. Went to bed. I got up the next morning and my entire kneecap was purple fuchsia. I've never had a bruise like that before.
Right.
And, just instinctively, I thought, I'll soak in a salty Viking, tub just because I was depleted from the night before. But I wasn't really thinking about the bruise. Lucky for me, I had taken a picture of it to send to my mom to say, look what I did to my knee. So I soaked for about half an hour in Salty Viking Minerals and went about my day, wore pants the rest of the day. It was winter time. And the next morning I got up and I looked at my knee and I was astounded at how much of an improvement it had made just from one day. So I started soaking in Salty Viking baths every day for a week and taking pictures every day. And within a week, I had faded the bruise and it didn't turn all the weird greens and yellows that normally happen.
Right.
It just literally faded every day substantially until the end of the week. I just had 2 little spots that were really where I banged my knee that were just a little, like a little red line of where I had cut myself apparently internally. And I was so surprised that I felt more like a customer, a client, because I was like, oh my gosh, can I post about this? Salty Viking's amazing. And it was just one of those wonderful moments where I again was converted to this Salty Viking cause because it actually works. And look at my
Right.
knee. I posted pictures everywhere of my knee. So I definitely became a believer again after that experience.
Well, and I took some of what you did with that, and I experimented a little bit with the pain soak, and I was doing recovery soak. And when I kind of hurt my knee a little bit doing a hard pack out run, I decided just to wet the area, sprinkle pain soak over my knee area, just specifically, and then take a wet washcloth and drape it over the top and just allow that to sit there. And I noticed a really quick decrease in inflammation, and I don't really know what I did to it, to be honest, but below the kneecap, it hurt. It hurt to walk, it hurt to twist, it hurt to run.
Ugh.
Um, and now, after a week of doing that, things are feeling great. And I'm back to trotting with heavy weight and doing what I was doing. Um, how much I can give to the Salty Viking, I'm not sure, but I know that um, that my inflammation went down very quickly with that, and I feel like I can attribute it to the Salty Viking mineral. So
So I'll have to, I always have the disclaimer of don't tell my doctors because I haven't asked them. Maybe in the future we can do a bruise study and an inflammation study as we go forward, to be able to tell more and more what Salty Viking and what these minerals are doing for us.
well, I think that for me, and I hope the listeners through this podcast will go out and check it out. A simple, I think you got to give the process, a couple weeks, a couple soaks a week, 2 or 3 a week for a couple weeks, to really begin to feel that coming around. Not that the pain soak didn't really make me feel better after one soak. But from my kind of sense of it, I feel like a $20-25 investment to try to check it out and see if it would work for you is cheap. I think it'll work for you. Of course, everybody's different. Everybody responds different. We can throw all the small print disclaimers out there however we want. But for me, I want my listeners to know that I believe in what this has done for me. And I hope that they'll take the time to go to your site, to your website, check you out on Facebook and Instagram. It's saltyvikingminerals.com, correct? And then Facebook and Instagram is Salty Viking Minerals as well. I've been tagging you on stuff on Instagram. I don't know if you're checking that out or not, but
Our Instagram
I've
is finally up and running. Facebook's there, website's there, but we had I was telling you earlier, we had an issue that there's a small team in New Zealand that is named the Salty Vikings that play rugby, and apparently we broke the system with Salty Vikings and Salty Viking Minerals. But yes, now you will be able to start checking us out on Instagram in addition to the website and Facebook.
excellent. Well, I have been putting in my Instagram story some quasi inappropriate bathing pictures. Um, I don't know how many people check out when they see those on my story, but to my listeners, I'm sorry, but you get the real me. There you go.
But no, it's just gonna intrigue them.
Is there anything else, Lizzie, that you think that the listeners need to know?
No, I think that's really good. Just trying it and seeing for themselves that it works. I think is all they need.
Right. Okay, so a quick question.
Uh-huh.
You're on wilderness attitude. So, what, what kind of wilderness attitude do you have, and what does it mean to you?
That's a good question. I was not expecting because my answer automatically comes to my mind, and it will be a unique one. So, wilderness attitude. Everyone tells me I am a vampire because my wilderness attitude is I want shade, I want cover from the sun because it just drains me. And so to twist that into something profound, I would have to say that, you need to, like we said at the beginning, you need to know what it is that drives you. And there was a time that I felt so guilty that I didn't love these outdoor open desert backpacking trips that my friends and family would go on because I just feel drained when I see the sun too much. And I'm empowered by shade and night. And so I think it was just owning what makes me powerful and knowing that just because other people make fun of me that I'm a vampire, to illustrate it, I went down to Moab for a salsa a salsa congress, a dance congress. And it was the most wonderful weekend of my life because I was in a cold, air conditioned ballroom in a hotel the entire gorgeous weekend in Moab. And my friends went out and they were riding bikes and mountain biking, climbing, etc. And we'd get together for dinner in the evening, and then during the day they'd go off and play. And I was indoors the whole time. And they told me I missed out, and I said no. I had the most wonderful weekend, and I felt all the more empowered that I was finally able to own that and
Right.
joy in their journey and their enjoyment, and not feel guilty that I did not want to go with them, but that I had filled my canteen that weekend in Moab.
Right on. Okay, one more quick question. So, if you could give our listeners like your favorite hack or your favorite suggestion, or and it could be anything, a site to go to, a song to listen to, a place to go to. um, hey, I realized the other day that if you put this Tupperware in this spot, I don't care what it is, what is your suggestion or hack or something that you want our listeners to check out?
Hmm. Well, what comes to mind is the most incredible place I've been on this planet, and it's called Meteora, and it's in the north of Greece. And I, for a time, went to school, some of my undergrad in England, and I traveled a lot in Europe. And most people go to Athens and incredible ruins. It's fascinating, but you take a train north towards Istanbul, and you get pretty close to Turkey. There's this little place, and it has these incredible Dr. Seuss looking rock formations. They're just like these super gumdrop rock formations, and on the top of them are monasteries and convents that were built centuries ago to keep the priests and nuns safe from all the different holy wars and different things that were happening. And a few of them are still in operation today. And it used to be that some of them could only be gotten to by scaling the rock, in
Right.
your friar's robe or whatever. And there's actually one of them in a James Bond movie where someone has to take a basket up through a rock cavity to get up to this monastery. But that was one of the most awe-inspiring places I have ever been, and that's just what came to mind. It's an incredible.
Okay. So people that can't necessarily travel there, what are they gonna Google to find this?
Meteora, Meteora.
Okay. All right. Cool. Because I'm not gonna be there anytime soon, so I'm gonna have to Google it too.
Yes. Oh, it's
Well,
beautiful. The pictures are breathtaking.
I appreciate you letting your geek out and letting everybody know that you're a vampire.
Oh, yeah.
That's good to know ahead of time. In most circumstances.
Yeah. Yeah. People just need to know that about me. It hinders
How'd you,
my life if they don't.
how'd you come up with the name Salty Viking?
Oh, that's a great question we haven't covered. Well, obviously, they're mineral salts, which is kind of funny that the word I settled on was salty because all mineral salts are salts. Though most people think of sea salt or table salt, which is sodium chloride, and there's actually no sodium chloride in the proprietary mix. So, they're still salts. So, side note, again, geek side note. So, salty, obviously, because they're mineral salts. And then Viking, because my ancestry is largely Viking, is Norwegian. And growing up, my mom used to say, we're tough because we're Vikings, we're Viking strong, And when I was trying to find the name, the strongest, most powerful thing that I knew growing up was that we were Vikings, and that
Right.
heritage made us powerful. So it's just, Vikings that are salty are the strongest people I could think of.
Well, I'm glad to have some of the strongest people's bath salts in my team corner. How's that? Well, thanks so much, Lizzie. I appreciate you being on. Once again, everybody, Salty Viking Minerals. Um, Lissy Largin, thank you so much for developing this product. It has done me a world of good, and I really look forward to continuing using it in my repertoire of uh, of of recovery and healing myself, and even allowing myself to push myself a little bit more, and knowing that maybe I've got a soak in my future.
Yeah.
Um, so let's see. Any shout outs? Hi, Mom. Hi, Dad. Hi.
Yeah, I would just love to thank Dr. Benyon at Fitness and Physiology. He's someone who started debunking all of my myths of bro science. Obviously, we've mentioned Eli Langford and his phenomenal research, and yeah, just them. They've been so instrumental in making sure that we keep Salty Viking in the straight and narrow, so it keeps kicking butt and helping strong, hardworking people.
Right on. Lissy, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thanks for being on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This was fun. Thanks.
It was fun. Thank you. Well, listeners, thanks for tuning in to Wilderness Attitude Podcast. We hope you enjoyed meeting Lissy and understanding a little bit more about Salty Viking Minerals. We want to encourage you to go send us an email. Go check out saltyvikingmineral.com. If you have any questions about the product, any questions for the research that's behind it, please get in touch with them. They will answer your questions. If they don't have it, they'll figure it out. That's what they're there for. And same with me. Thanks for sending us some emails. I was up in Denver this last weekend, got to meet some loyal listeners. Thank you so much for approaching me and saying hi, introducing yourself to me. That meant the world to me. And you can go to wildernessattitude.com, go check it out, download some podcasts there, give us some reviews. You can also give us reviews on any of the platforms that you're using. And we look forward to having you listen again next week. And we look forward to many more chances to meet with Lissy. I think that I'm going to do what I can, like I said in the podcast, to make her her product a part of my repertoire of what I'm doing. And I hope you will too. Also, wish me luck. Train to hunt. I'm coming for you. Have a great evening. Bye.